The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. How the hell do you accidentally start your own podcast? I literally just did that stupid ass shit just now. I was not ready to start the show yet. But here we are. Who else can it be but me, your man Louie T, here on the 385th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I appreciate you guys for joining me. Number of topics I want to get to tonight. Mainly just want to chop it up with y'all, see what y'all talking about. Nothing too major on the docket tonight, but we've talked about David Tepper. He threw a Tepper tantrum over the weekend in the shutout loss to the Jaguars on the road, where he threw a drink at a fan of the Jaguars. And I read something that was a bit disturbing, not surprising if it's true. I didn't bring it to your doorstep because you can't believe everything that you read on the interweb, right? Like, you got to be careful with that because you could easily spread misinformation because people are trolls and they'll try to get you. So I read it. I stored it away in the memory bank. It sounds like some shit that he would say. So I wouldn't be shocked if it's actually true. But we'll talk more about him because he's literally morphing into Daniel Snyder 2.0. Like, I didn't think this was possible, but the Panthers are in ownership hell. And the bad part is this dude isn't going anywhere anytime. So he just got here. Like, literally, it's the equivalent of showing up to a party that you have no intentions of leaving anytime soon, but someone who you really don't want to be in their presence is there, and you got dropped off and you don't have a ride. And this is the days before a Lyft or an Uber. You could call a taxi if you want, but you're kind of stuck where you are. That's pretty much where the Panthers fans are at this point. Like, David Tepper just got here, and it took him a long time to get his hands on an NFL franchise. He's not leaving anytime soon. And you're stuck. We're going to talk about him. We're also going to talk about the college football playoffs. And the semifinals did what it always seems to do, which is come correct. And it doesn't disappoint. And we're going to have a discussion about Florida State too, because I understand the excuses that are built into the ass whooping that was delivered to them 63-3. But I also don't want to hear the excuses that allowed you to get an ass whooping delivered to you 63-3. So we're going to talk about that as well. And then we're going to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. I'm open. The floor is open. We can jump into just about anything. Social media maneuvers, you know how we do it. And then we'll get to garbage time. I want to talk a little bit about Dalvin Cook. And let that be a lesson to anybody out there chasing a chip. And so we'll get to that at the end of today's show. But without any further ado, I hope the new year was brought in the right way by you and yours. It's 2024 officially, and this is the first time that we've had a chance to chop it up here on the Louie T Network podcast. So I want to wish every single one of you a happy new year. And if you don't mind, if you still do that type of thing, feel free to drop a New Year's resolution that you have for yourself down in the comment section. I'd love to read. But if not, that's okay too. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the show. And you know how we start off every single one of these. Today is no different. Just because it's 2024 doesn't mean we're going to change how we do things around here. Let's get to the order of the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I want to start with the college football discussion because over the weekend, I watched a ton of college football. Watched a little bit of the LSU Wisconsin game. I watched obviously the Florida State Georgia game. I watched Tennessee and forgot who they were beating up on. I watched obviously the 2 playoff games, and I watched, I think there was one more game that I watched. These bowl games are out of control now. Like college football has a big problem because you watch college football the entire year and then you get to what is supposed to be the most important game for these teams. And it's turned into an exhibition game for all the teams that are playing that aren't in the playoffs, essentially. If you've got a quarterback that thinks that an incoming freshman or sophomore is about to take his job, well, that guy's already entered the transfer portal. He's gone. If you got any receivers or running backs that are declaring for the draft, well, they're not playing in the game. And so you look up and you're like, what the hell am I watching? Who is this guy at quarterback? Why is the score 7-3 in the fourth quarter, right? I'm watching the Ohio State game and I'm like, why is the score, 13-6 or whatever it was, the ridiculousness of that. But I mean, we all understand, the nature of that game in particular and what happened to Ohio State's roster. There was no Marvin Harrison Jr. Their quarterback, McCord, had gone into the transfer portal. And so all they literally had was Trayvon Henderson, their running back, and not much else. I think Abuku was playing, but outside of that, nothing. It was bad, right? And they're not alone. There were a lot of teams that just didn't look like the team that we had watched play all season long because players have either opted out to get ready for the draft or they've entered into the transfer portal and they're not playing. Either way, I mean, it started out where coaches would, not coach their team because they took another job to go elsewhere. But now it's turned into an epidemic where players aren't playing, coaches aren't coaching. I mean, it's nasty, man. I mean, these bowl games are almost unwatchable. Then there's the case of LSU, who was getting their asses whooped, it felt like, by Wisconsin, and then they rally back and end up winning that game. It's a really fun game to watch. And people started saying, well, is Jaden Daniels a product of the LSU offense? And I'm like, what are we doing here, guys? Seriously. What are we doing? Are we doing this? Is this a thing? So because somebody else has success in that same offense, it can't be that quarterback's any good. It's got to be the offense. Now, I'm not a Jaden Daniels stan. I think that he's being overhyped personally. I think he's good. I don't think he's great. I don't think he is a world beater by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not going to sit here and demean him because his backup quarterback came in and played well in a bowl game. Like, that's stupid to me. But the biggest outlier of the weekend had to be Georgia's 63-3 thrashing of the Florida State Seminoles in one of the New Year's Six bowls, right? So Georgia was one of the few teams, and is one of the few teams in the entire nation that, should they have any transfers or anybody opting out to go play, get ready for the NFL, they've got so much depth and they're so good at every position that it really doesn't even matter, right? They're going to be just fine. They go 3-4 deep at just about every single position. And when I say every single position, I'm not talking about, tackle. I'm talking about, no, they go 3 deep at left tackle, 3 deep at right tackle, 3 deep at left guard, 3 deep at right guard, 3 deep at center. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, they go 3 deep at tackle. No. 3 deep at left tackle, 3 deep at right tackle. Like, they got a 4-star sitting behind a 4-star who's sitting behind a 5-star. Like, that's how they operate at Georgia. So most of their team played, however. Then the backups came in and administered overtime ass whooping. And then their backups came in. I'm seeing a white running back out there doing work to these boys. And I'm like, what am I watching right now? And I just remember looking over at Boss Man, and I said, and they were crying to get into the playoffs for this shit. Now, granted, I understand that a bunch of Florida State players either opted out of the game and decided to get ready for the NFL draft, like Jared Verse, for instance, their edge rusher, who will be a first-round pick more likely than not, opted out of the game. I get it. A lot of guys that would have been there had they made the playoffs would have played, and it would have severely altered how they looked on the football field. I get that. Clearly, you had players that decided to enter the transfer portal that weren't playing. I get all of that. They were a significantly impacted and different team going into that game, because once you're not playing for a national championship, players don't give a shit. I'm out. And I'm not mad at them for that. I ain't glad at them, but I ain't mad at them. I understand. It's a business. But at the same time, the fact that you were non-competitive, and the question was never in doubt as to whether Georgia was going to win the game, but whether they would score 70. Me and my dad were arguing over the fact that we thought that Georgia was going to score 70. We were actually disappointed that they didn't hang a 70 spot on Florida State, because we had both guessed that in the second quarter. This was 35-3 in the second quarter. So we were talking about, hey, they gonna get 70 on these boys. That's why we stuck around, just to see if they were gonna get 70. The fact that Florida State couldn't even put up a fight with the guys that they had on the field, their whole team didn't leave. And I don't care that you went undefeated in a Power 5 conference in the ACC and you feel really good. You were down to your second, possibly your third string quarterback. You were going to get your ass reamed by whomever you played in the playoffs. It did not matter. If they would have taken out Bama, because essentially that's what would have probably happened, they would have had to take out Bama to insert an undefeated Florida State team as the fourth. You would not have scored a single point against Michigan's defense unless Michigan's special teams, and we'll get to that in a second, offered you up a gift. And they were handing out gifts like it was Christmas time and they were Old St. Nick. So you might have had a shot to score from that perspective. But on your own merit, going on an actual drive, you wouldn't have scored a single thing offensively. Nothing. That was an embarrassment. And to me, that is more a reflection of college football and where they sit right now versus Florida State's actual roster. This is more of a college football problem than it is a Florida State problem. They have to do something. I assume that they're going to expand the college football playoff here shortly, and I don't know if there's much that can be done in the way of the transfer portal or, players opting out to go and get ready for the draft. I don't think there's anything they can do about that, but it's out of control. It is out of control. And it makes for a really bad product come December into January. I mean, a lot of these bowl games were unwatchable. What Notre Dame did to Oregon State, that wasn't the Oregon State team we had watched all season long. They didn't even have DJ Ugalele. Like, I don't even know what he's going to do. Like, is he going to transfer again? Like, he's weighing his options between Florida State, I think he said, and going to the draft. Like, going to the draft for what? Who's drafting DJ Ugalele? I don't know. I just, all I know is they got a problem. I don't know how they're going to solve it, but they need to take a long, hard look at their product because it's getting progressively worse. The only product that is any good is the playoffs, which means you need to expand it. And I don't want to see a ridiculous number where you water down the product. I'm just thinking about 8 teams is good enough for me. I mean, 6 probably gets it done, to be honest with you, with the first 2 teams getting a bye and allowing the 3 seed to play the 6 and the 4 to play the 5. That probably gets it done. You probably don't even need to extend it to 8. If you really want to reward the best 2 teams in the nation for the entire year, you give them a first round bye. I don't know if you need to go to 8 or not, because usually we only have an argument about 1 or 2 teams. It's usually not more than that. I feel like, you know, adding in Florida State and Georgia would have been plenty to get it done this year. We didn't need 2 more teams being entered into the mix. We didn't need Ohio State or whomever else didn't get in with a 1-loss record. We were fine. I still think Georgia would have been, you know, better than most of the teams that we watch play in the playoffs, but they lost to Michigan. So it is what it is. But I digress. Let's get to the actual games that mattered. And we start with the first semifinal game of the playoffs, which was Michigan hosting Alabama. And I knew Michigan wanted no smoke with Alabama, but I knew that they weren't going to lose that. Jalen Milroe stinks. And I'm not afraid to say it. I've been saying it all year. He's trash. And I knew Michigan's defense. It's the best in the nation. And that includes Georgia's defense. Michigan's defense has been and is, to me, the best defense in the nation. And I thought they were well on their way to proving it up until the fourth quarter, where they kind of imploded a bit, gave up 10 points. But the story was really more about their special teams and how it was systematically, single-handedly trying to give the game away to Alabama. It was disgusting to watch. I mean, you have the muff punt that led directly to a touchdown. You had a muffed extra point. You can't miss extra points in college football. You're literally kicking from the 2-yard line. That's a free extra point. Just catch the snap, put it down, and it should go through the uprights, unless it's blocked or your kicker somehow has the yips. That's free points. But even those felt like an adventure. Like, after they tied the game up, or after they cut it to within 1 on the Blake Corum, I don't say, was it the Blake Corum touchdown run, or did he throw a pass to someone? I know that Corum scored the game winner in overtime. I want to say, I forget who scored the touchdown to cut it to 1 at 20-19. But whatever the case may be, I was sitting there at the edge of my seat like, are they going to blow this extra point? Because they already messed up one of them. So you missed a field goal. You didn't even attempt an extra point because the ball went through the hands of the holder. You muffed a punt that led directly to an Alabama touchdown. And then you dropped a punt. Like, so they take the guy out that muffed the punt earlier in the game, put in some other guy at the end of the game, and this clown tries to field it inside his own 5-yard line with like 17 seconds left on the clock. You're like, bro, where's your brain at? He muffs it, picks it up at the 2-yard line, gets waxed. And generally, when you do that, you fumble again because you didn't ever really get to regather the football and put it away. You're just trying to scramble to pick it up. And if you get hit quick enough, you don't get a chance to put it away and the ball goes. And there were nothing but Alabama defenders down there. Had he not repossessed it and found a way to put it away, they lose the game. Like, what are you thinking? He literally just avoided the biggest mistake potentially. I don't know the kid, but that would have been the biggest mistake of his life. And he would have received death threats and all kinds of foolishness, and it would have gotten out of control because fans don't know how to conduct themselves. And it's just a football game, but for a lot of people, it's more than that. And he does not know. I don't think he understands just how lucky he was to have gotten his hands back on that football and not fumbled again, and to not have that call to safety, which it wasn't. He was outside of the end zone. But had they lost that game based off of that play, he would have gone down in infamy. Michigan Wolverine football infamy. I don't know the kid's name, but I would have known it had that play turned into a fumble and an Alabama recovery and they won that game and Michigan lost that game based off of that play. He would have gone down in infamy. We would have all known his name. What are you doing? That's what you can ask about their entire special teams unit in that game. Single-handedly tried to cost Michigan an opportunity to win that football game. They were awful on special teams. Every single way you could imagine. Even with that said, they got it done. J.J. McCarthy was cool, calm, and collected on that final drive of regulation. Blake Corum was the best player on the football field, if you ask me. And he showed it at the end of regulation. He showed it in overtime, 2 carries into the end zone just like that, right? He had the touchdown catch early in the game, and he ended the game. And somehow, some way, J.J. McCarthy is the MVP offensively of the Rose Bowl. Make it make sense for me. Because I'm looking at Blake Corum and saying, you're not here, Michigan, without number 2. McCarthy's cool, but without Dusky, you're getting a Dusky and you're going home instead of heading to the national championship game. But whatever. Jim Harbaugh called J.J. McCarthy the greatest quarterback in Michigan history. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. All right, then. That's awesome. Record-wise, I don't know if there's an argument to be made. What is he now? 26-1 in his career or something crazy like that? But I don't know if I would call him the greatest Michigan quarterback ever. But he wins this national championship. I guess there's an argument to be made. Now, isn't there? I'm not impressed with him. I don't really know. Give me one thing that he does extremely well. I can give you everything that he does average. Give me one thing that he does extremely well. I'll wait. Whatever. He strikes me as the type of guy that will end up in the league for 2 or 3 years, bounce around on 4 different practice squads, and then end up back in the college ranks as a coach 6 years from now, 7 years from now. That's what he strikes me as. But we'll see. I could be wrong. Anyway, he's got a chance to write his name down in the Michigan record books forever. Win on next week on Tuesday, or whenever the national championship game is, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, whenever it is. Win, and then we can have the greatest ever conversation in terms of Michigan quarterbacks. But anyway, the last play of the game for Alabama in overtime, was one that was highly debated. There were like 19 timeouts taken, and then you come back and that's the play that you run. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure you all know that that wasn't the play call. The play call was to throw the swing screen outside to the running back who had out leveraged the defender. You had 2 blockers to block 2 defenders, and then it was man-to-man coverage, and he had already outflanked that defender. It probably would have been a touchdown had that outermost receiver been able to get that block and capture that edge and seal without holding. You probably get a score there, but the snap was low. It threw off the timing, and he just took off and ran. So it looked like a predetermined quarterback draw, but that's not what it was. Whatever the case may be, Jalen Milroe stinks. And I was shocked. Me and Boss were watching the game, and both of us looked at each other after the first like 6 minutes and said, Alabama's going to get their top blown off, clean off in this game. And then Michigan's special team was like, yeah, not so fast, my friends. They turned into Lee Corso on us. Not so fast, my friends. And they said, now we're going to make this a game. And then Michigan's offense kind of grinded. And you got to give Alabama's defense some credit. They hung tough, and they settled in after a slow start because Michigan was moving the ball early on. The special teams of the Wolverines really gave Alabama life and gave them a spark, kept the game a lot closer than I thought it should have been. And then you look up and Alabama scores 10 unanswered points, takes the lead, and you're thinking, what the hell is going on? Because I'm like, there's no way Alabama is supposed to be in the national championship game. This is, to me, all season long, they had been a faulty football team. Like, they shouldn't have even, I would have taken them, even though they beat Georgia, I would have taken Georgia over Alabama in the playoffs, if we're being honest and objective about what we've watched from the two teams this season. Georgia was the better of the two teams. But again, Bama beat them in the SEC championship. That's that. You move on, right? So I would have been beside myself had Alabama made it to the national championship game because they're just not that good. They're just not. But credit to Nick Saban and his group for somehow dragging that carcass of a team along the way that they did. I mean, remember, they benched Jalen Milroe for a game. And I told them, don't do it. Tyler Buckner stinks. I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. I'm like, this guy is ass. You're going to lose if you keep this guy in the game. And they had a fight on their hands. I want to say it was against USF. South Florida had these boys fighting for their lives. And they realized, even in a victory, and we can't go back to Tyler Buckner. He's definitely as advertised. So they went back to Jalen Milroe. They won the rest of their games, clearly. And it was not pretty. They had to have the miracle play against Auburn. And I forgot what they said they call that play now. But, you know, the 4th and 31 or whatever it was, miracle in the corner of the end zone. Like, they had no business being in the national championship game. And I'm glad that the football gods stepped in and made sure that the right team made it. But, boy, Michigan tried to do everything in their power to not go to the Natty. So they punched their ticket in an epic. You know, the Rose Bowl games are usually the best. I still think about that epic Baker Mayfield, Georgia Bulldog game when Mayfield was at Oklahoma and they had that shootout. I want to say the Vince Young USC game was at the Rose Bowl. I could be wrong. That one felt like it was at Pasadena, right? I think some of the best games we've ever seen happen at the Rose Bowl. Anyway, that was a good game. Then you go to the nightcap, and I don't know about you, but I just assumed that Washington was going to take care of Texas easily. For some reason, I've watched Texas this season a number of times, and Quinn Ewers he's all right. I mean, I look at him like JJ McCarthy. He's all right. You know, he's cool if you're into that kind of thing, right? But I looked at them as a team that, similar to Alabama, they've gotten by this season. They've won some games where you go, oh, that was gross. But hey, you won. That's the name of the game in college football. I mean, style points don't really matter at the end of the day. Did you get it done? And they got it done, right? There were a couple of those in there. And then there were, some games where they flexed their muscle and they showed why. And I said, you know what? This is perfect for you because you'll never be in another one of these, right? Love Sark. Glad he's gotten his life together. Good to see the work that he's doing at Texas. And that's a proud, storied university that wants to get back to the top so bad. And, I laughed at the ticket prices for the national championship game because at halftime when the game was close, the ticket prices for the national championship game were through the roof. To get in, it was like $2,400 to get in the door of the national championship game because it was Michigan and Texas. That's the two fan bases that had bought up most of the tickets. So at that point, you can talk about two of the most storied franchises in college football history. They think their teams are going. They bought up all the tickets. Just to get in the door, you're paying an astronomical amount. And, once it looked like Washington was going to win, that number plummeted all the way down to $600, right? We're talking a whole $1,800 in a matter of an hour to an hour and a half, right? But watching Washington in that first half, specifically Michael Penix Jr., was a thing of beauty. I mean, the display that he put on in that first half was on par with some of the best performances we've seen. And I talked about this on the quarterback conundrum video, the series that I just started. We've seen some epic performances in the semifinals of the playoffs in the last 5 years or so. Justin Fields is probably at the very top with this 6 touchdown performance against Clemson in the Orange Bowl after taking that shot from James Skalski and coming back in and just throwing dime after dime after dime. That's pretty high on the list. The TCU Michigan game last year was just ridiculous. There wasn't like an individual performance. It was just a crazy game that you just felt like the team with the ball last was going to win, right? It was just a ridiculously insane game. What the final score ended up like 45-42 or some craziness like that. So that was a crazy game. Obviously, the performance that CJ Stroud put on against Georgia's defense last year was incredible. If not for his defense collapsing epically in that game, and then his field goal kicker putting the cherry on top with the miss, he would have done what a lot of people didn't think he could do, which was defeat that, tough Georgia Bulldog defense that would go on to smother TCU and win the national championship in epic fashion. But he threw 4 touchdown passes against that Bulldogs defense, and he was spectacular inside and outside of the pocket. And, I mean, we've seen some incredible games. I already brought up the Baker Mayfield game against Georgia. That was just so much fun to watch. We've seen some great games and some great performances, and that Michael Penix Jr. performance, particularly in the first half, is right up there with Baker Mayfield, with Justin Fields, with CJ Stroud, with all of the crazy performances that we've seen in these playoff games. That one is right up there in the first half. I mean, he was unconscious in the first half. He could do there was one play where they send a blitz, this Texas, and they get a free hitter coming, and he sees it, and he throws a dime down the left sideline, and he spins as he throws it away from the contact, and he drops it literally like he just dropped it over the receiver's hands. I mean, he was incredible. There was one throw that I went, oh, you lucky son of a bitch. Like, okay, now you know that you living right and you're in the zone when you're getting a break like that. And that's how I knew they were going to win the game. He throws a ball that gets tipped. It should have been picked off, and it's right into the receiver's hands. Tip, boop, right into the receiver's hand, touchdown. I said, okay, is that kind of half for you, bro. Like, you can do no wrong right now. I mean, he was locked in. And that's the kind of performance that puts you on the map, just like it put Justin Fields on the map, even though he was going to be a first-round pick. It put him in the conversation, as I mentioned earlier on the quarterback conundrum show. It put him in a conversation to potentially be the #1 overall pick. Nobody was going to take him over Trevor Lawrence, but he was in that conversation. Even if it was brief, even if it was a fleeting thought, he was in that conversation for a night. You know, a lot of people are prisoners of the moment, which is what I think is happening right now with Michael Penix Jr., because he's been doing this all season long. He was doing this last year. He did this at Indiana. This is not new. If you've been paying attention, this is who he's been. The problem is he's always hurt. And because he plays out in Washington, and a lot of people aren't paying attention to left coast football because it's on so late, you missed it, right? So now they put it on, and it still was on late, technically speaking, but people tuned in because that's what you do with the New Year's, with the 2 games in the playoffs, and he did it on the biggest stage. And that changes a narrative for some. When you do it on this type of stage, it changed the narrative for CJ Stroud. But credit to Texas. I thought this game was going to get away from them. I thought they were going to fade to black. I thought they were going to, kind of say, hey, we made it all the way to the playoffs. Texas is back. We're going to the SEC. This is why I said you got to do it now, because once you take your ass to the SEC, I won't see you in these playoffs anymore. Texas is good. They're not that damn good. We're going to find out just how good they're recruiting, right? It's one thing to do it in the Big 12 where, all we got to do is find a way to beat Oklahoma, and we should be fine, right? Or Oklahoma have a down year and then we'll still win the Big 12, because we're only going to lose to one team, and it's either going to be TCU if they're really good, and TCU wasn't good this year, right? Colorado got them week 1 and they were never the same. Or it's going to be Oklahoma, right? The rest of the conference usually sucks. Baylor hasn't been good since they had the scandal with Art Briles. They haven't been any good since then. And Texas Tech hasn't been good since Michael Crabtree was there. So, what are we talking about? So now you're going to play with the big boys. I don't even know which SEC bracket they're going to be in, East or West, whatever. I just know that they're going to lose some games every year. I can't see them making it out of the SEC as a one-loss team. I don't care what side they're in. They're more likely to come out of that thing if they're on the east side of the bracket with Tennessee and Florida and those teams. You put them out west with Ole Miss and Bama and Auburn, they're never getting out of there alive. They got a better chance of it surviving on the east side of the bracket with Georgia and company than they do the west side of the bracket. I'll just say that. But whatever the case may be, this was their chance. I don't see them getting back here anytime soon. Now, again, if they expand the playoffs, a 2-loss Texas team with a great resume and the rest of the country is struggling, maybe they sneak in as a 6th seed or something. I don't know. But a 1-loss Texas team, I don't know if I see that happening again, right? Whatever the case may be, I thought they were going to fade to black. I thought they were going to kind of wilt under the pressure that was being applied to them after the fumble by the running back, Blue. I think it's Blue, who I like a lot. So let me just say that I'm a Sanders fan. The tight end, man, I've been eyeballing this kid for about, 6 months. And I'm like, hey, if you're coming to the NFL, call me. I gave him my card. Hey, Washington Commanders, give me a call, right? I got my eye on that dude. Anyway, they got some players on that team, does Texas. But once that fumble happened, I thought that was their last opportunity. And let's be honest with each other. If the running back for Washington doesn't get injured and it stops the clock, this game's over, right? They would have punted that football with maybe 16 to 14 seconds left. And they would have had to go the length of the field. And am I tripping or am I the only one or am I just tripping? Was there a clock malfunction at the end of this game? Because I remember once upon a time in college football, when you get a first down, the clock stops, even if the ball is inbounds, until they reset the sticks. And under 2 minutes, the clock stops once you go out of bounds. Well, Texas, on that second to last drive that resulted in a field goal to cut it to a one-score game, they got out of bounds on the first play. The clock did not stop. They got a first down on another play. The clock did not stop. And I'm like, am I tripping? And Greg McElroy is like, yeah, well, Texas is doing a great job. You know, they've stopped the clock on every single play. And I'm like, the clock hasn't stopped yet. What's going on? They should have had more time at the end of the game. But, I mean, nobody said anything about the clock. So maybe I was tripping. But anyway, there was a freaky set of circumstances, chain of events that had to happen for Texas to have a shot. And every single one of them happened. And it almost made me feel like, oh my God, Texas is going to win this game. This is unbelievable. Michael Penix Jr. just put on a ridiculous show, right? A masterclass on how to dissect the defense in college football. And he's not going to get an opportunity for an encore. You got to be kidding me right now. We're not going to get the two best teams in the nation because Michigan and Washington are the two best teams in the nation. They do it totally in different ways, right? One is at one end of the spectrum, the other's at the opposite end of the spectrum. Michigan's offense is just good enough, but their defense is the best in the nation, I believe. And Washington's defense stinks, but boy, can they score, right? So we're getting opposites meeting and butting heads in this national championship. And normally, when two teams like these butt heads, the defense usually wins out. The team with the elite defense usually is able to swallow up and devour the team with the great offense. That's usually how this works. 95% of the time, great defense beats great offense. We'll see what happens in this national championship game. But they, needed the clock to somehow stop, whether it was a penalty on Washington or an injury or something. They needed something crazy to happen. Well, they got the injury, right? So that stopped the clock with like 42 seconds or whatever. And 50 seconds, whatever I think they ended up putting like 2 more seconds on the clock and it was 50 seconds. And then they get the fair catch interference. So now I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, not only did you get the clock stop, they give you an additional 15 yards. They start the drive at their like own 30. He takes a shot to this guy down the right sideline. He catches it inbounds, but of course the clock stops with, you know, the sticks having to be reset and all that good stuff. Then they get another, I want to say the running back might have had the catch on the sidelines that they looked at. Either that or it was just another catch. And then they ran down and either they spiked it or something happened because they literally had like 3 shots at the end zone. And the first play was one of the most head-scratching plays I've ever seen in my life in a situation like that. There's like 18 seconds left. And I want to say both teams called well, Texas didn't have a timeout. Somehow the clock stopped. I don't remember. Maybe it was they reviewed the catch. I want to say it was the running back catching it out of bounds, catching the ball. And I could have been another play. I can't remember. I know Washington used their final timeout because they had the corner go down to an injury, their best corner, and he came back in the game. So they got all of these opportunities to talk about what they want to do, and they're literally like at the 18-yard line or something. Like they got like a legitimate 3 shots at the end zone. Time is not even a factor at this point. It's crazy how they've gotten down here so quickly. But they said that Washington has like the 8th worst pass defense in the nation. They are one of the worst, so it's not a surprise. The first play they come out, they run a swing screen to the running back. I'm like, are you high? Hey, look at me. Sark, what's going on, man? What are we doing right now? You just ran a swing screen to your running back? Everything is supposed to be to the end zone. Nothing can be inbounds at this point. Did you just throw a swing screen? Luckily, it was incomplete. Because if he got tackled in bounds, the game's over. Like, what are you doing, dude? This is unbelievable. Then the next 2 shots, they take a shot to the ex-Georgia receiver, Adonai Mitchell or whatever his name is. First of all, he made a ridiculous catch on a third quarter touchdown. I want to say it was third quarter. It might have been. I think it was fourth quarter, early fourth quarter, where he jumped way too early and stayed up there. It's like he was levitating Holmes and snatched it out of the air and made a hell of a catch for Ewers and helped them try to get back into the ball game. But to me, they should have been taking a shot to him. Right. I didn't like the play calls that I saw and what they were trying to do, but they did throw him one ball in the end zone, but it wasn't even close. He didn't even see it. So I really thought Texas was going to come back and steal that game and win by 1. It was crazy. But the best team won. The team that was supposed to win won. And Washington held on, won the football game by 6. And now it sets up the matchup that I think most of us wanted to see. I know Texas fans would have preferred to see their Longhorns in the national championship game. And that, from a number standpoint, if we're talking about from a rating standpoint, ESPN would have preferred Texas, Michigan. Like that's a much bigger draw than Michigan and Washington. But those are the 2 best teams in the nation. They were 1 and 2 going into the playoffs, and it held up. And it's contrasting styles. I'm excited to see how this game goes. I want to see how Penix plays against the best defense he's seen all season long. He hasn't seen a defense like this one, hasn't seen anything remotely close to this in the Pac-12. Utah is probably the best defense that conference has to offer. This is the best defense by far and away he's seen all season long. And I want to see how not just him, but Odunze and all of those guys handle Michigan and how they play football. I think Michigan's offense will have an opportunity to be successful against Washington's defense, but they're going to have to get more out of J.J. McCarthy than just being a game manager. He's going to have to make some big-time throws. He's capable. I've seen him do it before. But I want to see if this thing ends up being, because I don't think this is going to be a shootout. Personally, I don't think Michigan's defense is going to allow it to be. But if that defense doesn't have their fastball, or Washington's offense is just that good, and that could actually be the case, can Michigan's offense keep up? We'll see. I think it's going to be a fantastic game, though. Either way, I'm interested. They got me. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about before we get to whatever it is you guys want to talk about is the Tepper tantrum that we saw on Sunday from Panthers owner David Tepper. Now, I just want to put this out there. I read on social somewhere, and I don't remember, it was on X, but I don't remember the site that was claiming that they got this transcript from somewhere. I wasn't going to bring it to you guys, like actually show you, because I don't know if it's true or not. And I can't confirm it. Nobody else, none of the major outlets was carrying this. So I don't think it's true. But again, you got to be really careful with what you're, running around. Like so many people send me things on social and they don't vet the source at all. They don't fact check anything. They just see it and they go, oh my God, and they send it. And I'm like, dude, this is fake. First of all, this isn't even a real account that you're sending me this from. What are you doing right now? Right? So many people get duped on social media, right? Because again, we live in a microwavable society where everyone wants to be the first one to break news. So when you see something, you want to be like, oh my God, I got to tell this person. And you didn't even check to see if it was real. You just want to be the one that tells that person so they could go, oh my God, right? That's not important. What's important is that it's actually real. Okay? It's actually real. That's what's most important. Not that you're the first one to tell me something that's fake, but that's nor here nor there. This article that I was reading suggested that his meeting with the NFL went something to the effect of the NFL's like, hey, dude, what are you doing? You can't be doing that. You're an owner. You're held to a higher standard. Dude, you can't do that kind of stuff. And he's like, no, you're right. I'm sorry. He just got me really mad. And, us rich people are targets, because, we're millionaires and people are always trying to egg us on. And we get held to a higher standard because we have money. It's almost like we're penalized for having money. And he's like, I'm upset that I even threw the drink at him. That was an expensive drink. And I'm like, this can't be real. Because there was so many insults to people, working class people in there, that I'm like, he didn't say this for real. But then I the way he conducts himself, it jives with what I was reading, but I can't say that he said these things, right? But it was appalling what I read. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. If this is true, he's literally Daniel Snyder 2.0. If this stuff that I read is actually accurate, he's literally Daniel Snyder 2.0. I mean, he's already got the title of worst NFL owner by a long shot. I mean, like Daniel Snyder held that title, was the undisputed heavyweight champion of worst owners of the NFL. We're really in sports, but, him and Dolan would go back and forth and they would slug it out for, 12 rounds, and we'd get to a decision and we'd go to the scorecards and it'd be a split decision, at times between him and James Dolan of the Knicks. But even Dolan pseudo got his shit together. The Knicks are actually putting a competent team on the court that can at least make the playoffs. And so Snyder took over that title and wore it proudly for the last, 4 years of his tenure without any question. In the NFL, he's been wearing that title for about the last 12 to 15 years. And the minute that he gives the title up, I'm thinking, man, this thing's going to be vacant for a little while. Maybe the Spanos is, with the Chargers, or somebody reaches up and grabs it and claims the title. But I think this thing's going to be vacant for a little while. And Tepper's like, nah, let me get that. Let me get that title. Let me get that strap. We ain't winning shit in Carolina. I need to be the champ of something. Let me get that. He's taken over the mantle as the worst owner in the NFL. And I don't think it's even close right now. We talked about him. Look, I haven't talked about an owner this much on the podcast since Daniel Snyder. All right. I've talked about David Tepper and his impulsiveness and his quick temper and all of the bad qualities that he's had, being meddlesome, wanting to be a decision maker, although he's not a football guy, right? But wants to be involved in everything, thinks he's one of those owners that thinks he knows ball. Similar to Jerry Jones, he wants credit. He wants to be involved. And part of the reason that it's a problem when you bring in someone like Tepper with all this money, who has been wildly successful in his career as a businessman, who isn't used to people telling him no, who isn't used to people telling him you're doing it the wrong way. He's not used to having voices that trump his. And when you've got all that money, generally, no one's voice does elevate over yours. So you get the final say, you tell people what to do, and it's hard when you're out of your business of expertise to then step back and say, hey, I just spent $2.2 billion on this team, but I'm going to move back and allow the football people to handle matters of football, and I'll let you guys do your job. You guys holler at me if you need me to okay something, or you just want my opinion on, hey, this is what we're thinking about. Hey, hit me up. That's what most owners do, right? The good ones, at least. But the ones that think that because I spent my money, I have to be in on every decision and shit, I should be making most of the decisions. Those are the ones that are going to run organizations into the ground. And that is what David Tepper has effectively done since taking over the Carolina Panthers. And, you know, the scary thing with him is that, and the scary thing with some of the Panthers fans is that they're still in that twilight phase where they're still almost in disbelief as to what has happened to their organization. I remember this like it was yesterday when Daniel Snyder first took over, and within 4 years or so, you could tell, oh my God, this guy is horrible. We're never going to win anything with this guy as our owner. And it was really shortly thereafter the Marty situation that we all started look, because he came in and at the tail end of 99, almost effed up that season that ended up turning into a magical one. The last one that I actually thought my team could win a Super Bowl was 1999. He almost effed that up because he tried to reverse the Brad Johnson trade. But that's nor here nor there. He came in and immediately made his presence felt in 2000 with the 2000 skins. And anytime you have a season that is just affectionately known by the season's name, you already know. Like if you have a nickname for that season, then you know the shit it went really bad or it went really well. Okay, it's either going down in infamy or it's going down in history as a great year. Most times when you get a nickname, it usually goes down in infamy, right? It's rare that you go, oh, the greatest show on turf. Well, that's great. You know, that's a great nickname, right? Generally, it's the dream team. Well, that was a shit season for the Eagles. Or it's the 2000 Redskins or the 2000 Skins. That was a shit season for the Redskins. Well, he brought in, you know, Deion Sanders and Bruce Smith and Mark Carrier and Jeff George, and, you know, the list goes on and on and on of him coming in and trying to buy a Super Bowl. And clearly it did not work. And a lot of fans said, oh, he just wants to win. Then Marty comes in and Marty kicks all of those dumbasses out of the building, takes away parking spaces, gets the clowns and the clown show out of the building, and they're not having fun, so they fire Marty. And that's when a lot of people said, uh-oh. Uh-oh. Because Marty was on to something. And they wrestled back the control, and they brought in Spurrier, and it was a shit show. And by then, we had all but turned on him, and we realized this guy is so toxic. And then he brought Joe Gibbs back, and it's like all was forgiven for a 4-year stretch. All the while, they're still effing up stuff, but we had on our, you know, burgundy and gold rose-colored glasses on because it's Gibbs. They're still going out here and they're getting Adam Archuleta and Jeremy, you know, they're doing stupid shit with money, and they're not re-signing Ryan Clark, and they're letting Antonio Pierce go, and they're bringing in all these different guys that are either past their prime, like Antoine Randall, or we would call him Antoine Randall Fell, because when he would get back on punt returns when we got him, he didn't want any parts of it. In Pittsburgh, he was this dynamic punt returner, gets to Washington, and at the first side of contact, he falls down because in his mind, I'm a number 2 wide receiver. What am I doing back here on punts, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff we were spending money on in those days. So they were still doing dumb shit with the money, but now it's Joe Gibbs. So it's okay. And a lot of people saw right through that. But, you know, by that point, we realized, oh, shit, we're in trouble. The Panthers fans are still at that point that a lot of Washington fans were at right around the time when he got into business with Marty, where a lot of people were like, hey, what's going on here? And there was still a huge faction of the fan base. He just wants to win. That's not how I see it with David Tepper. And this is coming from a fan that was brutalized for over 2 decades and knows what bad ownership looks like firsthand. You're going down a very, very dark path with David Tepper. And while he does want to win, I don't doubt that, his methods of going after winning are absolutely the wrong way to go about business. And you're never going to win with this guy as your owner if he does not change. And guys in his position, they don't change. He didn't make all of this money by, adjusting and changing who he is. He's not going to change. And I knew something was terribly wrong when I saw the hostage video right around week 6 or 7. And I poured Frank Reich and I said, man, Frank's in trouble. Frank's doing his best job to try to be diplomatic and try to explain how this guy's putting pressure on me. I'm sitting down in meetings with this guy and he is absolutely grilling me and giving me the work and the business. And he has no idea how this football shit works, but yet he's doing all the talking and he's not doing any listening. I'm going to tell you something. My nephew, love him to death. And I think I've told you this story before. I know I have, because this shit is so ignorant on so many levels that I know I've told you this before. But my nephew said, I think the most ignorant shit I think I've ever heard in my life to me. It was so ignorant that I didn't even have a rebuttal for it. The shit caught me off guard. It was so ignorant. So my nephew, we were having a conversation, and my nephew is like his dad. His dad is a know-it-all. Problem is, he don't know shit unless it has something to do with cars, right? So his dad really doesn't know shit, but he loves to act like he knows everything. So by virtue of that, he is just like his dad. He tries not to be like his dad, but he's just like his dad. And it's sad, right? But it is what it is. So he's talking about a situation that he knows nothing about. I've experienced it, right? Several times over. I'm trying to explain to him and give him a little game, right? Every time I can give out game, you guys know I try to give out game, right? Whatever game I got, I give it. What good is it going to do me to hold on to it? So I'm out here dishing these shits out like John Stockton, man. You take this dime, you take this gem right here, right? And I'm trying to drop this gem on his melon. And he keeps cutting me off and starts talking. And the shit he's saying isn't making any sense. And I get pissed off and I'm like, bro, stop talking. You learn more by listening than talking, especially when you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Just shut up. He says, well, I actually learn more about talking than listening. That shit was so dumb. It ended the whole what do you say to some stupid shit like that? What do you say when somebody says, I actually learn more by talking than listening? What do you say to that? That's how I feel about David Tepper. Like, what do you say if you're Frank Reich? You've played football your entire life. You've been a player in the league for double-digit years as a quarterback. You've been a coach in this league for double-digit years, whether it's been as an assistant or as your own guy, as a head coach in multiple stops. And this owner who thinks he knows what he's talking about, has no idea, is doing all the talking. Won't shut up. Thinks he knows, told you to draft Bryce Young, yet he's trying to convince everybody that it was a unanimous decision amongst the entire organization. Look, I am a Bryce Young fan. I'm not saying that they did the wrong thing, although right now it looks like they did the wrong thing, right? But I'm not one to give up on a guy after one season, okay? But right now it's very lopsided. CJ Stroud 100, Bryce Young -50. That's the score right now. I'm well aware. But Frank Reich didn't want Bryce Young. Who are we kidding? That's not the DNA of a quarterback that he wants to coach. We know the kind of quarterback that he's had success with. Carson Wentz, Andrew Luck, they're all big, tall, physically gifted quarterbacks. That's what he wanted. CJ Stroud looked like those guys. That's the guy he wanted. And that is not the guy that the owner wanted. So he did the Dan Snyder thing. And he said, I'm in charge. It's my team. We're drafting Bryce Young. What do you say when the owner tells you this is what we're going to do? You go, yeah, okay, yeah. That sounds good to me. Now the shit's not working. Now he's getting pissed off. He fires Frank Reich. There's all kinds of backstabbing going on within the organization. We all read the Athletic article kind of pointing that out. It's a mess. He goes on the road against Jacksonville. They get shut out. And this guy can't handle himself. Fans talking shit to him. He hauls off and throws it. Probably just ice in the damn cup, right? Probably nothing more than a little ice in there. Maybe a little water in there from the ice melting a little bit. Whatever the case may be, understand, and this is the shit that pisses me off with the NFL, because they find players out of the wazoo for, playing the game and having accidents happen throughout the course of the game. Shit happens, and you're finding these guys, 25% of their check. Yet an NFL owner goes out here, shows his ass. These are the guys that are supposed to be upholding and protecting the shield the most. He goes out here and he throws a drink on a fan. The very people that are paying for your product, he throws a drink and disrespects one of them, and you slap him on the wrist with a $300,000 fine. And people have been, coming up with, how much this equates to for his fortune, right? So people like, hey, I've read in one place he's worth 20 billion. I've read somewhere else he's 17. We're going to go with the 17, right? He's worth 17 billion. And the article that I read with the 17 billion said it equates to someone that makes $75,000 a year being fined $1.35. The other article that I read that said if he makes $20 billion, $300,000 to him is like fining him 75 cents. What are we doing here? Like, seriously, what are we doing? The guy's out of control. He's a head case. And this is the guy that you want representing an NFL organization, one of 32. Had that fan done that to David Tepper, he would have been removed from the stadium, might have been thrown in jail, and would have been banned for life. Banned for life from coming to any Jaguars game, let alone probably any game in the NFL, any stadium. This guy can't come. He just gets a $300,000 fine. That's it. I mean, the NFL is full of double standards. We know that, right? But this guy's Daniel Snyder 2.0. I mean, this is ridiculous. And I feel so bad for Panthers fans because they got to deal with this shit for the foreseeable future. Like, he's not going anywhere. Anyway, I digress. You guys, man, I went on a long diatribe there, right? Good thing is, it wasn't just on him. Most of it was on the playoffs, college football playoffs. I had a lot to say about college football. I really did. But let's jump into social media maneuvers or Midday Marauder. Y'all know what it is. Y'all know how this works in case you don't. You want to have your comment read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. Now, remember, if you want to ensure that your comment gets read, Super Chat function is the best way to ensure that that happens. I can't guarantee you that your hashtag is going to be read. You want your comment to be read, Super Chats are the way to ensure that. So let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. We start the night off with my guy, JP, John Perez. Thank you for the Super Chat. Greatly appreciate you. John Perez writes, Tepper is such a dope. Dude is Snyder 2.0. And you were the first person to call him Snyder 2.0. And I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. That's a bit harsh. Snyder's, bottom of the barrel. He's the worst of the worst. I don't know if I want to put, you were absolutely right. You were spot on. This guy is a piece of work. He's definitely a shit stain on the league. And the bad part is they can't wash him out. They can't wash him out. Cam G, thank you for the Super Chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, do you think A.J. Brown is selfish and diva? Some do. I've said that already, though. I've told you guys this a long time ago. I told you guys this last year when they were throttling the Giants in the playoffs, and this guy is on the sideline sulking because he hasn't caught a ball yet. You're up 27-0, or it's 37-3, or whatever the score was, and you're on the sideline pouting because you haven't, it's one thing for Walter Payton, the greatest running back in NFL history at that time. I think it was Super Bowl 20 in 1985. It was January of 86 when they're destroying the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And he's been the face of the Chicago Bears. There were lean years where they had no other player but him. And he's fought his ass off to get to this point. They make it to the Super Bowl, and all he wanted was a taste of the end zone in the biggest game of his career, and he didn't get the chance. And they got down there like 8 times, and they gave the ball to Refrigerator Perry, and that shit hurt him, right? Nobody really knew how pissed off he was about it until afterwards. And everybody, including Mike Ditka, said, if I knew how much it meant to him, I would have made sure he scored. He just wasn't, he got caught up in the moment. He wasn't thinking about it. I get that. I get why he was upset. That's different. A.J. Brown is selfish. He is a diva. I hate calling a grown man a diva. We got to find a different word. But he's selfish. It is about him. He makes it about him even when it's not about him. We've been talking about A.J. Brown the last 3 weeks. The Eagles are struggling. Why are we talking about A.J. Brown? This team is struggling. Their defense is the worst. They've changed coordinators and they've gotten worse. And we're talking about A.J. Brown because he won't talk to the media. Why? Because it's always about A.J. Brown. I told y'all that last year when Eagles fans didn't want to hear from me. It is what it is. I told you, for as talented as he is, keep those types of players away from my goddamn team. Because you can't win anything of substance with a dude like that on your squad. He's a Terrell Owens light version, right? He's not anywhere near T.O., but there's some of that in him. You can get to the Super Bowl with a T.O. You ain't winning this shit, though. And that's how I feel about A.J. Brown. He's going to do some damage. He's a hell of a football player. But his mindset and how he goes about business, he's got a loser mentality. Sometimes it ain't about you. It's about the team. And it's just about what mood you catch him in. Like, I'm a moody guy. I am a moody, Louie T, me. I am a moody guy. So I know a moody dude when I see one. He's a moody dude. And so when you catch him in the wrong mood, it's about him. That's where we differ. When I'm being moody, I don't make it about me. Just leave me alone, right? Just let me be. I'll get out of my little funk and I'll be back and I'll be straight. When he gets moody, he has to let everybody know he's moody. And now I got to make it everybody else's problem. It's not just a me problem anymore. I'm going to make it your problem. I'm in my feelings. I haven't gotten the rock. Whether we up 30 or we down 30, I need the ball. It's about me. That's selfish. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, double up, thank you for doubling up. Who writes, what's the worst college bowl game you've ever watched? Oh, I just watched it. It was Florida State and Georgia. I mean, that game was over in the first quarter. I mean, that was the worst defeat in bowl game history. They lost by 60. That's the worst, I think, worst defeat I would say in a bowl game, because they don't let, they used to not, I can't say that they have the same criteria that they once did, but you used to have to win 6 games to be bowl eligible. I don't know if that rule still exists. There's so many damn bowl games now that they may let you in the, Heinz ketchup, mayo, whatever. I saw somebody pouring a whole thing of mayo on the coach, the Duke's Mayo Bowl or some shit. Like, it's so many of these damn bowls now. The Tax Slayer Bowl. You might be 5 and 6 and get into the bowl because they just don't have enough teams. They got to let somebody in here, right? Generally, you get to a bowl game, you're a solid team. You're not going to lose by 80. They're not letting in the 1 in 10, Southwest Christian State, Alabama Longhorns, right? Everybody is at least decent, and you're usually playing a team that is of equal value. They're not going to put a 6 and 6 team against a 10 and 1 team normally. So that you're 6 and 6, and the team you're playing is 7 and 5. Like, you're not that far apart. You'll get a game where the one team's 8 and 4 and the other is 6 and 6, or one team's 9 and 3, because of like Notre Dame might be 6 and 6 and Tennessee might be 9 and 3, but it's Tennessee and it's Notre Dame, so they figured, hey, this is gonna draw. So we're gonna put those two teams against each other. But generally speaking, you're going up against a team of equal value. So you don't usually get ass whoopings quite like the one we saw this past week with Georgia beating up on Florida State. Understand that Florida State was the 5th team in the nation. Georgia was the 6th team in the nation, and they lost by 60. And I've already gone through that, but as to why and how and all, but still, there's no excuse for that. That's the worst game I've ever seen. Cam G, thank you. And I'm not being a prisoner of the moment. I mean, I've seen some bad national championship games. I mean, hell, the Georgia TCU game. I mean, shit, 1A, 1B, right? Like, God damn, that's a national championship game. I watched Notre Dame against Alabama in a national championship game. I got all excited, even though I knew we weren't that good. I still got excited. My team's in the national championship game, and we got our asses handed to us. But TCU Georgia was total domination. That was not a fair fight. That was a college team against a JV squad. That's what that felt like. So I guess it's 1A, 1B. Cam G, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I hope if we stick with Sam, it works, because the 24 class of QBs doesn't look great. Outside of maybe Shador, I know it's early though. I mean, and that's part of the thought process as to why he's going back to school, right? He knew he wasn't going to be number 1 this year. And Deion said, well, my son doesn't play second fiddle to nobody. Hey, he would have if he would have brought his ass out this year. Not sure that he would have gone ahead of Drake May either, right? Well, to ensure that he doesn't get embarrassed, if that's embarrassing for them, you send him out next year where, the crop doesn't look as great. And we say that now. You get to next year and 2-3 dudes step up and come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's a crowded quarterback class. But right now, on paper, it probably doesn't look all that great. So, but again, I'm not even worried about next year's crop of quarterbacks. I'm just focused on this crop right here because the likelihood is we're going to take one of them. So this is what I'm focused in on. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy Chris, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Chris writes, hey Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise, as always, really truly do appreciate you, and happy New Year's to you and yours. Which of these two AFC teams do you expect to make the playoffs and why? Bills, Colts, Texans, and Steelers. So you already know one of them is the Bills for me. I've been saying this since they should have beat Philly but lost. I said the Bills are going to the AFC Championship game, and they haven't lost a game since. I always like the team that has their back up against the wall and is essentially playing playoff ball a month prior to the season being, done and the playoffs getting started. The Bills have been playing playoff football since late November, early December. Like, they couldn't lose a game. They lose on Sunday and the Steelers win on Saturday, they're out. So they've been playing playoff ball for a month now. Had to go to Kansas City and win. They did that. Had to beat the I don't remember who they played directly after that, but I think it was I want to say, I forgot who it was. It was somebody decent, half decent. They beat them. Then they beat the Chargers. Then they beat the Patriots, and now they got to beat the Dolphins, right? So they're in a position now where they win and they're in. I expect them to win. Dolphins have a ton of injuries. This is what the Dolphins do. I had a Dolphins fan earlier in the year when they lost to Philadelphia say, this is what we do. We stink. We don't win games at the end of the season. Well, he looks like he's spot on, right? Any good team that they've seen this season, for the most part, they haven't gotten it done against. They lost to Kansas City. They lost to Philadelphia. They got their asses reamed against Baltimore. They got their asses kicked by Buffalo the first time. This feels like who they are. So I expect Buffalo to take care of business. So they're one. And I haven't been on the Colts all year long. I am still shocked at how the Colts are here at 9-6 with, 9-7 with a chance to win 10 games and make the playoffs. I am still flabbergasted at the fact that two teams from the AFC South are going to get into the playoffs. That is mind-boggling for me. But that's going to probably happen. So, not probably, it is going to happen. Jacksonville has already clinched the division. Now, one of these two teams is going to get in as a wild card. My money's on the Texans. But I've been so wrong about the Colts all season long that at this point, it's probably going to be the Colts. But I'm going with the Texans. I still can't believe that the Colts are here at this point. So I'm going with those two teams. The Steelers are just missed. The Steelers, I already told you, similar to the rule in the rule book that says if Ryan Fitzpatrick starts a game for you, you're not allowed to make the playoffs. There's no rule that says if you lose to two, sub 500 teams in a row at home, that, but we've never seen two teams 10 games under 500 come into your building and beat you. I think the Patriots and the Cardinals were both either 9 or 10 games under 500 when they went to Pittsburgh, and they lost both of those games. At that point, you have to understand that they're done. Like, the fact that they've rallied back and made it interesting is a great story, but you can't go to the playoffs after that. So, it's Bills and Texans for me. Bills and Texans. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Tepper was quick to fill Snyder's void in the NFL. I mean, again, I was shocked. I thought that belt and that title would be vacant for a while, right? Someone would have to really go through a rough patch for about 2 or 3 years for us to christen someone as Dan Snyder 2.0, or just say, hey, this guy's the new worst owner in the league. But he wasted no time. I mean, Snyder hasn't even been gone a calendar year yet. and Tepper's already snatched up the belt like, yo, this shit mine. It's amazing. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Chris. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, hey, Lou, 2 questions. 1, would you be open to trading Jonathan Allen in the offseason for a second, or is he too valuable a leader to the team? And 2, would you consider trading down in the first for more draft picks, and why? I've already told you this, right? You remember on my show, what, 2 weeks ago? Might be 3 weeks now. I predicted what the offseason looks like, and I told you we're trading Jonathan Allen for a second-round pick. I already made that abundantly clear. Now, I could also see a scenario in which Washington goes up to the number 1 overall pick with Chicago if they decide to hold on to Justin Fields, and they include him in that deal and they send him to Chicago in that deal as a part of the package to get to number 1. I could see that as well. Either way, Jonathan Allen is not going to be on this team next year. I feel very confident in that. I've already told you guys that. I told you that like 2-3 weeks ago. So that shouldn't come as a surprise to you. Number 2, would I trade down? I think if the next GM comes in here and he's not blown away, or she is not blown away by any of the quarterbacks, and the Bears decide they want Caleb Williams and they're not trading a pick, then you're not blown away by any of the other quarterbacks at number 2, right? You might be interested in a Michael Penix should he last until the second round, similar to Will Levis, for instance, would be a great example of a guy that, hell, we had a conversation about Will Levis going number 1 overall to Carolina. There were rumors floating, and I remember I did a podcast saying, yo, you got to be out of your damn mind if you think Will Levis is going number 1 overall, and the guy falls to the second round. That could happen with Michael Penix Jr., right? Those injury concerns, and I did the video today, and it's there, and look, you can say what you want about his talents. Those injury concerns are real, okay? They're not fake. They're real. So he could easily, they're going to be, I guarantee you, we're going to hear this during the draft process. They're going to be teams, 6 to 8 teams that take him completely off their board because of the medical. I guarantee you that's going to happen. Now, generally how this works is the 6 to 8 teams that take him completely off the board aren't going to have a chance to draft him in the first round anyway. And of the 6 to 8 teams, 3 of them don't have an early enough second round pick that if they wanted to take him in the second round. So it's easy for them to just say, oh, he's not, I'm taking him off my board. Whatever. If you had a chance to take him, you would take him, but you don't. So yeah, he's off your board. Cool. But what I'm saying is, if you're Washington and you don't love any of these other quarterbacks, you like them all, and that includes Penix, and you think, well, if he's there in the second round, I'll take him, but if not, I'm cool with going with Sam Howell, right? Or I'm cool with getting Bo Nix or whatever, right? Then, yeah, you trade down. That's a possibility. But again, I find it hard to believe that you're going to be at number 2 with essentially the pick of the litter at the quarterback position. Again, granted, we don't know what Chicago's going to do, and we don't know how that whole situation is going to play out, but there will be a scenario that may exist where you can get all the way to number 1. If not, whomever they take, you'll have the pick of the litter from the rest of the quarterback. It's hard for me to envision Washington not taking one of those signal callers. It just I said the same thing about Atlanta when they were up at number 4 and they took Kyle Pitts. You can't ensure that you're going to be here again. You can't pass on the opportunity to take a quarterback. Again, if you don't love a guy, then you can't force it. Clearly, they did not love Justin Fields or Mac Jones. I was advocating for Justin Fields, not Mac Jones, right? Because as I told anybody that would listen in, Mac Jones doesn't have a superpower. And if I'm taking a quarterback in the first round, you have to have a superpower. He didn't. So I thought they should have taken Fields because you can't ensure that you'll be drafting this high again. And the Falcons haven't drafted in the top 5 since then. And as you see this year, they've already won 7 games, right? And so they're going to be in the middle of the first round. They're in no position to get any of the top quarterbacks. Now, they'll be in a position to get a Penix, potentially, depending on where he goes. I'd like to think he'll be available in the middle of the first round. Bo Nix will be there for sure. And so we'll see, you know, what happens with the rest of the quarterbacks and what happens and who's interested and not interested. But they missed out on an opportunity to get an elite talent. Fields may not have been an elite passer or this, that, but he was an elite talent. Washington will be in a position to get an elite talent. Are you okay with passing on that? Because you don't know if you're going to get to this point again. You have to be one of the worst teams in football to be where we are right now. Can you see yourself being back here now that we're actually a competent NFL franchise? Can you see yourself getting back to the number 1 or 2 overall pick in the draft? You got to tell yourself, we're not getting back here. We don't want to be here again. We got to make the most of being here. I can't see them doing that. Would I be open to it? Sure. I told you, whatever the GM decides, I'm rolling with it. I'm not one of these fans of, if the GM does this, I'm going to be rooting for another team. If that's your mindset, if that's how you feel, you should just pack your things and go right now. Just go right now. Don't wait. Nobody's stopping you. Get your briefcase, right? Get your suitcase, rather. Get your suitcase. Open that bitch up. Grab all your shit and go. Nobody's stopping you. If that's how you feel, go right now. So I'm open to everything. I haven't made up my mind on any of these quarterbacks. I haven't made up my mind on, because I'm not closed-minded. I don't give a shit what happens. I'm rolling with whatever the GM says. I don't have to love it, but I'm going to respect it and I'm rolling with it. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Door Gunner, who writes, when we start winning again, all of those fans in North Carolina that became Panthers fans might come back to Washington fans again. They will revolt on Tepper. It could happen. And we still got a huge contingency down in Carolina anyway. When we go to Carolina, it always feels like a pseudo home game. So I know there's a lot of Washington fans down in Carolina, but you know, of course, when there's a team that comes there, they migrate over there and root for the home team. I don't advocate switching on your squad. Like, that's never okay for me. But it could get that bad. I know of some Washington fans that became Ravens fans because of Snyder's antics. So it can be done. I don't advocate for that again, but I've seen it done before, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's done again. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section here. We'll take let's see where we are. We'll go all the way up until 2 hours. And then once we hit the 2 hour mark, we're going to get into the garbage time and we'll get out of here. Cam G, thank you for the super chat, or thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Cam G writes, Lou, I heard Lamar will be resting for the final game. Does Harbaugh remember what happened in 2019? What do you want him to do? Play Lamar in the final game of the season? He turns an ankle and they're doomed? What do you want him to do? He's doing the right thing. Look, you earned the right to rest your starters. Yes, I will say that it sucks when you don't have to play the following week either, and your guys are going to have 3 weeks off. But what would you rather have? A rested Lamar Jackson, 100% healthy, ready to go? Yeah, maybe a little rusty, haven't played in an actual game in 3 weeks. I get all of that. Yes, I'm pretty sure he's very aware of what happened in 2019, but what's the alternative? We've seen this team without Lamar Jackson each of the last 2 years and how that ended for them. You can't risk Lamar. He is the MVP of this league. He's going to win the trophy again, and he's the most valuable. And literally, when I say this, I mean this literally. He is the most valuable player left in the playoffs when it starts. You take him off the Ravens, they're done. I don't know if you can say that about any other player, right? You take him off of that team and they're not the 1 seed. They may not even be a playoff team. That's how much Lamar Jackson means to them. And that's a good football team. And we've seen them win without him, but we've also seen them turn to next to nothing without him. So, we'll see. John Wynn says, was the Miami Dolphins supposed to be deadly this year because of Dalvin Cook on the offense? Because last year the Miami Dolphins didn't sign Dalvin Cook as their running back at all. Well, he wasn't on the Dolphins team. So I don't even know what you're asking there, John. I don't even know what you're asking. John Wayne writes, if your family gives you NFL tickets to the Commanders game as a Christmas gift, would you still go anyways, even though you don't care about FedEx Field? It just depends. If they're given to me as a Christmas gift, they're now my tickets and I can do whatever I want with them. And I would probably sell them. That would be my move. Now, if I can't get reasonable value for them, I may just go, but the likelihood is I'm not wasting my time going to a game. I'd probably sell them. I didn't pay for them in the first place, so I'd probably sell them, get what I can get for them, and keep it pushing. That'd probably be the move. Niners fan writes, love the new quarterback conundrum show about Penix. Can't wait for the Bears and Patriots episodes. And stay tuned. I've got a lot in the chamber, and there are going to be a lot of series coming out of this channel. This is just the beginning. We're going to really turn it up this year, especially being that the Commanders are going to be hot and heavy in so many different avenues: GM, head coach, quarterback, draft, etc. So I'm going to be super busy, and that's going to get the creative juices flowing, and you're going to have shit just coming out of the channel like that. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys. Niners fan also writes, not thrilled that we are resting Brock this week. Would have liked to see him get at least a few series in before sitting. Now he could be rusty in the divisional round. Again, the risk is not worth the reward, right? I get what you're saying, but all it takes is for Brock to go out in a meaningless game. We saw what happened to Bradley Chubb. They're down 800 points to the Ravens in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes to go. Bradley Chubb is out there. Why? Don't ask me. I don't know, right? Why he's still in the game. And he tears his ACL. Now, he could have done that exact same thing on the very first play of the next game, and it would have still equaled out to the same thing. But at least it would have been in a game that meant something with the game still in the balance, instead of him playing in garbage time in a game that is already over. Make it make sense. Again, you got to be able to understand that these are professionals. There may be a little bit of rust. That's fine. I'd rather have to deal with the issue of shaking off rust than having to try to get my guy ready because he turned his ankle in a meaningless game that we didn't need. And now I've got 2 weeks for him to get over a 4-week injury. And now he's going to have to be out there playing with an ankle injury the remainder of the playoffs for however long we're in the playoffs. Nobody wants that. So again, the risk isn't worth the reward. You'd like him to be able to stay in tune and in rhythm and get a few reps, and that's great. Nah, I'm good off that. Let Sam have it, right? Let Sam Darnold have it. You'll be fine. If the worst thing you have to worry about is shaking off a little bit of rust in the divisional round and it takes you a quarter to do so, so be it. I'd rather deal with that than the alternative, which could be dealing with an ankle injury, dealing with a knee injury, dealing with a shoulder injury, and now he's out altogether, or he's banged up and he's compromised and he's not 100%. PSN Commanders Network, shout out to my guy. You know what it is. Right, Lou, what it do, big dog? What's going on with your tones? You know what it is. My guy. Hannah B writes, I was wondering why the intro started without seeing you first. That's so funny. Yeah, that was so janky. Like, I don't know what my brain was doing. Like, I'm setting everything up and I'm getting prepared and I'm putting my headphones in and I'm getting my laptop in front of me and I'm getting my setup the way I need it to be in order to do the podcast and the live stream. And I'm thinking I'm going back out of it to the main screen to set everything up. And instead I'm starting the stream, and the stupid thing was it even asked me, "Hey, you're starting 5 minutes early. You sure you want to do that?" And I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? Just let me out of here, right? And I hit the button, and then as soon as I hit it, my brain was like, bro, do you realize what you've done? I'm like, oh my God, this is so janky. Like, I didn't even have, the screen set up correctly. None of that. Like, I had the kickback screen up, which is the wrong thing. Like, everything was all effed up. And I'm like, well, bro, what are you going to do now? You can't end the stream, and you have to start it all over again. I'm not doing that. So yeah, it was crazy. That was wild. Jefferson Montenegro writes, that last drive by Ben is magical. We don't want him. We need him. I mean, you know how I feel about him and what I've been saying. All right. This is what I've been advocating for probably for the last 2 months strong. But I've been eyeballing Ben Johnson since last offseason. You know what's crazy is that David Tepper spent literally the entire owners meetings talking to this dude last time around. And I'm like, there's no way he's watched what has transpired the last. First of all, the job was available last year. If he wanted the Panthers job last year, he could have taken it. He went back to Detroit because he didn't want any of the jobs that were available last year. So that should tell you that now that they have, like, Bryce Young was in the mix last year. If he wanted to coach Bryce Young, if he wanted to coach CJ Stroud, he could have gone to Carolina last year. They had the #1 overall pick, and he could have coached one of those quarterbacks. So now you've seen Bryce Young struggle. Not to say that he can't turn it around and be a damn good NFL quarterback, but you've seen him struggle. You see Tepper's temperament. You see how irrational he can be. You've seen him already fire a coach after 11 games. You've seen him throw a drink on a fan. You really want to go work for this clown? I mean, there's no way he's going to Carolina. I think we're the front runners for Ben Johnson. But again, I don't even know if the next group is going to want him. Who's to say what is going to transpire? Jefferson also writes, I'm so glad that you've awoken to Eric ass enemy. I don't know why many fans still want him as the head coach. Like, are they blind? I don't think that they're blind or anything of that nature. I just think they don't believe in Sam. They think Sam was the cause and the root cause of all of the struggles. Just like I'm blaming most of the struggles on EB. I'm not blaming all of it on him because the players haven't, adapted and adjusted well to his scheme. Clearly, we got guys running in the same area, 3 receivers all in the same spot. Like, what are we doing? 2 guys how many times have we seen that this year? I brought that up numerous times. That's not on EB, right? That there's poor spacing. These guys, they've practiced these concepts. They're being altered by the defense, and they're not doing a good enough job of adapting to what's being done. But the play calling hasn't been great, right? And that's been my issue. And there are people on the other side of this thing that say, no, it's not the play calling. All right. This guy's won a Super Bowl. This guy's been to 5 AFC champions. No, this isn't on him. This is on the 5th round pick. So anyway, I digress. Jefferson writes, if Ben Johnson becomes head coach, do you expect us to have similar drafts as the Lions, like drafting a running back? Not this year, obviously, maybe in the near future. You can't say that the success of the Lions drafts are tied to Ben Johnson in any way, shape, or form. He's not the GM. He's not even the head coach. He may have some input as to, say, them drafting the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. He might have said, hey, this kid is dynamic, and you put him in my scheme, I can do wonders with him. Yeah, he might have that kind of input, but that's all Brad Holmes and his staff and the guys that he trusts, area scouts, et cetera, et cetera. That's Dan Campbell putting his input in the mix. The drafts that they've turned in, like Dan Campbell was an NFL tight end. He knows a good tight end when he sees. He was the one that probably said, hey, this Zach Laporta kid, like, this is the guy, this is the guy right here. Like, Laporta is exactly what we need, right? So I think that's, part of what has made them so good is it's again, everybody's in lockstep, right? Can't really say the same about Washington, right? So we'll see. But Ben Johnson, I don't know if he's a huge part of what they've done in the draft. I can't say that is in fact the case. Barrett Downing, been a member for 28 months. Writes, Lou, thoughts on USC quarterback and the talk about him? I mean, Caleb Williams is as talented a quarterback as we've seen come out, out of college and into the NFL in quite some time. We rarely do you see a guy with the ability to do what he's done off script as consistently as he's done it at the NFL level. And so he's very polarizing. He's not the biggest kid in the world. People are making a big deal out of his fingernails. I don't give a shit about any of that stuff. People made a big deal about him crying to his mom. I don't care about any. I care more about the fact that after they lost to UCLA, he didn't want to address the media. Like, he ducked the media, and like that shows immaturity. As a fan of a young team like the Memphis Grizzlies, and I watched them suffer through that Lakers series last year with problems with immaturity, with Dylan Brooks doing the shit that he did, then not wanting to talk to the media, John Morant running from the media after a tough game. After watching how they conducted themselves as a young team and knowing that that's immaturity, I have PTSD. When this guy's in college, he's already entitled. People have been kissing his ass probably since he was 10 years old, telling him how great he is. And he's checked every box every step of the way. He gets to, Oklahoma, he's tearing it up there. His coach leaves, he goes with him. He goes to USC, he's tearing it up there. He's got all these deals. Man's got Dr. Pepper. He's already eating good. NIL deals. I saw a video of him getting into a red Lambo. I think I saw him getting into, and he said, "What did Lightning McQueen say? Ka-chow," right? And I'm like, I don't know about this dude, man. I'm like, I'm nervous. He strikes me as an immature guy that is going to have issues with losing and things not going his way and tough coaching, whatever the case may be. If the NFL gobbles him up early on, he could lose confidence quickly. The immaturity is a red flag for me, but I could be wrong. I could be so wrong about this kid because the talent is definitely there. But I'm usually not wrong about these types of things, right? These kind of red flags. I'm a pretty good judge of character when it comes to that kind of stuff. And he's given me enough reasons for pause where I go, that's another strike. That's another demerit. So the dude's super talented, but this whole notion that he's going to come back home and he's going to rescue us and save, I don't like that shit at all. I don't like that shit at all. Anyway, I digress. Let's see. Where did we leave off? Let's see where we at. Inc. says, who else could it be but my guy Louie T, double E? Thankful for you, Lou. Likewise, thank you for you, Inc. I don't know if you care about the new name talk, but would you like to see a new uniform? If so, what changes? I don't care nothing about none of that stuff. Honestly, here's all I care about. Don't change the colors. You can alter the way the uniforms look. You can go back to more of a classic look. You can, experiment. I mean, you couldn't have gone further away from what the uniforms used to look like with the ones that we currently have. I don't really care about any of that stuff. You guys know that. Just win. That's really where I'm at with all of that. Just win. Period. Billy Hughes writes, I'm not enamored with any of these QBs coming out. Williams is the best of the bunch. It's his maturity raising red flags for me. Feels like deja vu. And that's the thing that has me kind of taking a step back and really assessing the situation like, hey, we really need to do our homework on this kid. If, in fact, he is available, whether it's at number 2 or at number 1, and we got to go up and get him, whatever the case may be. If you're thinking about taking this kid, if this is who you are zeroing in on, you have to do the work, because this dude is this decision is going to be so big, right? I mean, if we didn't double up at the quarterback position, double up in 2012, the Robert Griffin III situation would have set us back 5 years. Instead, it only set us back like 3, 12, 13, 12. You can't even call that a setback, right? So it started in 13, 14, and 15, right? And then Kirk took over in 15 for good. And if he didn't, Robert would have started that year, we would have struggled. That would have set us back 4 years minimum. Like, you can't miss on this quarterback, or it's going to set you back a minimum of 3 to 5 years. Things have changed. That was a decade ago. Things have changed drastically since then. Quarterbacks aren't getting that much time to figure the shit out. All right. As we've seen across the league, not just with Washington, but you're not getting that much time to figure it out. You get 2 years maximum before somebody's giving up on you and moving on. So they got to figure this thing out, right? They got to figure this thing out. I don't know, man. That his maturity is something that he's young. And when you're young and you're given all of this responsibility and all this money, everybody doesn't handle it the same way. I just know I'm a little nervous. I can't say that. I can't say that. JP, my guy John Perez says, let me ask you about my guy Caleb Williams for a second. Love his talent, but I don't like his maturity issues. And I've already talked about that. So, again, I don't want to make too much of them right now because it's early in the process. I don't know the kid, as I've mentioned. And so I don't want to just go off on these rants about his, about him being immature because, again, I don't know him. I can only go off of what I've seen and how I perceive that. There could have been a reason why he didn't take the podium after the UCLA loss. He could have been super ill. He could have been dealing with concussion-like symptoms. There could have been any reason why. And I just didn't do enough digging to figure it out. But from what I was told, there was nothing wrong with him. He just didn't want to talk to the media. Okay. So I don't know. The Kachow thing was actually funny, but it's less funny when you're doing it and you're, 21 years old, 22, however old he is, and you're getting into your Lambo, and it's a little less funny doing that, but you can't. You can do all of that on socials, but you can't get behind the mic after you get your ass whooped by your crosstown rival. That it's less funny then, right? But it was actually funny, right? Anyway, I digress. Commander Joe 21 writes, "Hey Lou, I think Jacoby Brissett was never injured. I think he made a business decision. He didn't want to risk injury before the season ended." I don't necessarily agree with that because Jacoby Brissett, so it's different. Jacoby Brissett has made some money in the league. He is what he is. It's not like he's going to get an opportunity to start for a team next year. He's a career backup at this point. Somebody's going to pay him money to be that next year. He's one of the most sought after and valued backups in the league right now. He's going to be paid. Someone's going to give him $12, $13 million next year to be their backup, even if it's a 1-year deal, right? He's going to get that kind of bread next year. Whether he came out here and played or got injured or what, he was going to be on an NFL roster unless something catastrophic happened to him, right? But look, anytime you get a chance to play in this league, you're not going to turn it down. Taylor Heinicke was in a position to do that because he hadn't made any real money in the NFL. Him going out in a meaningless Week 18 game, jeopardizing his potential free agency, could have sent him back to ODU to finish whatever degree he was, prepping for to try to take that test. It could have sent him right back there and off of an NFL field for good. One injury could have done that to him. He hadn't made any real money. Now that Heineke's made some real money, that deal he signed with Atlanta, that's life-changing money, right? I think it was a 2-year, $20 million deal or something like that. I don't know if he'll get, all $20 million of that or whatever, but that's more money than he's seen in his life. And again, he's established himself as a backup quarterback, and he'll hang around for a little while. He needed to get that first payday. Brissett has already been paid multiple times over. I don't think he's concerned with getting injured at this point. He's gonna, if he had a chance to play, he would play. I think he really did injure himself. I really do. But who's to say? Jefferson Montenegro writes, Louie, not including projected first rounders this draft, who do you see becoming a steal based on potential in the second and later rounds? I don't know. I don't know that stuff right now. I won't dig into the draft until I'll start earlier this year for sure. But usually I don't dig into the draft until February. As soon as the Super Bowl is over and I transition fully out of the, season, I go into the offseason, but I'm going to start that process earlier this year. So I don't know who's what, who's the number one this, number one that, none of that stuff. I don't have any opinions on any of these players because I haven't watched them specifically yet, but trust me, I will. Trust me, I will. John Perez writes, you have to feel bad for these vets like John Allen and Payne and Terry. All they've known since being here is losing. I hope they get a chance to see consistent winning here. I hope it's here too, right? But the reality of the situation is it may not be here for some of them. And it sucks, but at the end of the day, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I was super disappointed about them wanting to leave, because losing sucks. And I remember, I've been reading a lot of things about what guys who have left here have said. And, Chase Young talked about how it felt like he was back at Ohio State when he went to San Francisco. There was a level of excellence there. There was a expectation level that didn't exist here in Washington. Trent Williams talked about how they put the players first. They put them in the best positions to succeed in that organization, and it starts from the top. And then you hear Terry McLaurin say, I was at the Pro Bowl with those 49ers players, and it was like 6 or 7 of them that made it to the Pro Bowl last year. And they are different, and you can tell that their culture is different. It felt like I was at Ohio State again, and you keep hearing that. When Jonathan Allen talks, he always references Bama, right? And, I already told you that the greatest allegiance that you will ever find with an NFL player, really with any player, but specifically NFL players, I think their allegiance to their college is much greater than any other sport. Basketball players go to school for 1 year and they leave if they're really good because they have to go. If they didn't have to go, they wouldn't even go to college. So there's no allegiance to their universities. If you've only gone for a year, yeah, you might, have some sort of love for Duke if you're Zion Williamson and you spent 1 year there and it was great. Jason Tatum, you spent 1 year there and it was great. That's your school. Yeah, cool, great. But it's different when you go somewhere and you spend 3-4 years there. You actually graduate and get a degree from there. You establish lifelong friendships there. That's different, right? That's what these football players do. You can't go to college and leave after a year or two. You got to stay for at least 3 years. Whether you play 2 years in redshirt 1 or not is up to you. But you got to go to a university, whether you stay at one university for 3 years or you go there for a year, you transfer, you go to another place, whatever. Most of these guys go to a school, stay there for 3 years, and they build lifelong bonds. And that's the place that they feel most attached to. Montez Sweat has a tattoo of the Mississippi State Bulldog on his bicep, right? Like, they rep these colleges more than they rep their NFL, teams, because that's never going to change. Where you went to school and you graduate, that's not going to change. I could be on a new NFL team next week. If you're Jonathan Allen, I could be on a new team next week. But where I graduated college, where I went to, what team helped me get to where I am now, that's never going to change. So there are always fond memories when you go to these schools and you go there and you only lose 2 games in 3 years. There's fond memories about winning and what the culture was like. And to come here to Washington and to see how bad it is and to experience the opposite of what you experienced in college, that's rough. Terry McLaurin, same thing, went to Ohio State, stayed there for like 4 or 5 years. All he did is experience winning there. They may not have won a national championship while he was there, but they probably played in one. They went to the playoffs probably 2 or 3 times, played in probably every single Big Ten championship while he was there. So, yeah, it's a different standard that those programs are held to. You get here and the bar is extremely low. You're losing all the time, and that shit sucks. Period. All right, we hit the 2-hour mark. So I do have a super here from Reedy Davis. We'll knock this out, and then we'll get to garbage time. Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, Lou, having played a lot of football, is Bo Nix a good choice? I have to have my mind changed on Bo Nix. I have a preconceived notion of who he is, and that's not fair to him, because you are allowed to grow and develop and get better. That does happen over time. He clearly has gotten better. How much better? Is he just playing against garbage defenses and carving them up? I don't know. I have to watch. I've watched him play a couple of times, and I've seen some impressive throws, and I go, hey, Bo, that was some pretty good shit. But he's playing with a ton of confidence right now. What happens when that confidence is reduced to back to where he was at Auburn? Is he going to reduce to be playing like he did at Auburn? The one elite defense, again, in 2 years at Oregon, the one elite defense, or it might have been 3 years at Oregon, it felt like he'd been there forever. The one game I saw him against an elite defense, he reminded me of why I don't like him. He played Georgia in the season opener, not this season, but the season prior, and he got his ass kicked. Threw like 3 picks. One of them was a pick 6, and it was an ugly one, and I'm like, okay, you're still the same Bo Nix. But even that was a long time ago, right? And he may be better because of some of the experiences he's gone through, and he's a different quarterback now. I got to watch him. They tell you don't scout the helmet, scout the player. I got to not scout who he once was. I have to scout who he is now. I struggle with that sometimes. So on Bo Nix, I don't know. I got to watch him. He's played really well. You know who, I'm going to tell you this right now. You know who I think is going to ultimately end up with him, and I think would be a perfect fit for the kind of offense that they want to run? Bo Nix, to me, screams Denver Broncos. I swear he'd be the perfect fit for Sean Payton's offense. Swear he would be the perfect Drew Brees type of guy for Sean Payton. I think that's where he ends up. But we'll see. Anyway, I digress. Let's wrap this puppy up with our final segment of the show and garbage time. So Dalvin Cook restructured his deal with the Jets to ensure that there was no guarantees so that he could be released by the team. And I remember when Dalvin Cook signed with the Jets, and I remember saying this because I had a thing against the Jets at that time because it felt real Tom Brady to the Bucks-ish to me, where, they're allowing this veteran quarterback who's a first ballot surefire Hall of Famer to come in and kind of restructure everything there, kind of pick the players he wants to be on the roster. But at least the Tom Brady one felt more organic, right? This Jets one felt forced. It felt forced from the beginning. Like Randall, like at least all the dudes Brady brought along still had something left to offer and were damn good players still and all of that good stuff. It felt like Aaron Rodgers was like just bringing his boys with him. Like Nathaniel Hackett is his boy. He's dead weight. Okay. Every offense he's touched has gone to shit except for when Aaron Rodgers is running it. So as far as I'm concerned, Nathaniel Hackett, if there's no Aaron Rodgers, is useless, right? But he's there as the offensive coordinator. Why? Because of Aaron Rodgers. Randall Cobb hasn't been good in like 6 years. Like Randall Cobb hasn't been healthy in like 6 years. But he forced Green Bay to bring him back. Now he's forced the Jets to bring him along for the ride. That's his boy. That's his best friend. And so as long as Rodgers says he's on the team, he's on. It's almost like Giannis Antetokounmpo, like, hey, if you don't bring my brother back, I'm not going to sign a long-term deal to stay here. What are the Bucks going to do? Not sign his brother? No. If that's the cost of doing business to keep Giannis happy, hey, I don't even know your name. You're on the team. Somebody get him a jersey, right? If that's going to keep Aaron Rodgers happy, hey, somebody get Randall Cobb a jersey, right? But, I mean, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Alan Lazard, I could have told any Jets fan, Alan Lazard is not worth 4 years, $40 million. Am I in the Twilight Zone? Alan Lazard on a 4-year deal? What are we talking about? He's been one of the biggest disappointments this year. Jets fans will tell you, we got to get this guy the hell out of here. If Aaron Rodgers plays, Alan Lazard probably plays better. But you can't be signing dudes to 4-year deals based off of Aaron Rodgers' availability. This guy's been ass all year long. And I saw all of this shit happening, and I said, I saw Dalvin Cook, and I'm like, yo, the Dolphins are interested. There are like 2 other teams that are sniffing around. Like, you got a few options. They may not all be popping and buzzing, but you got options, bro. Don't go to the Jets because you chasing a chip and you want to be a part of something. I've seen how this movie ends, and it never ends well for the dude chasing a chip. You remember the Lakers in the late 2000s? After their little run was over, Kobe and Shaq had were about to dissipate. You know, they were already at wit's end, and you could see the end was near. And Karl Malone and Gary Payton and all of these dudes decided to jump on the bandwagon, try to get them a chip at the end of their careers. I don't know if I rooted against a team harder than I did that particular rendition of the Lakers. It was so fun watching that team struggle and not win a damn thing. And it felt like the Jets were on the cusp of doing that. And when Dalvin Cook jumped on board, I'm like, bro, you already got like 9 backs on this roster that are capable. Obviously, they didn't know exactly what they would get out of Breece Hall coming off of a major knee injury. So that was the big question mark. But if Breece Hall is healthy, you're not starting Dalvin Cook over Breece Hall. You still had Michael Carter at the time, and you drafted Israel Abakanda. Now, he did get hurt in the preseason, but you already had stuff there. Why did you need to go get Dalvin Cook? So I said, hey, Dalvin, this is not a, I mean, if, and this is a big if, we didn't know at the time, but I'm like, yo, Dalvin, I'm pretty sure your agent told you what Breece Hall's situation was when they were expecting him back. And if he's healthy, I would hope the Jets said, hey, he's our guy, but you're going to still get carries. That's fine. They lied to him, but that's fine. Like, you can understand that. But when he signed, I was like, yo, this feels like you chasing a chip instead of going somewhere where you're really going to get an opportunity. Remember, Dalvin Cook has been an 1,200 yard every year, 278 carry type of back, type of dude. Like, he's not a guy that's sitting on the bench, getting secondary carries, getting mop up dude. Like, that's not who he's been in his career. So to ask that man to come in and be an ancillary part of that running back room, that's a tough, bitter pill to swallow for a guy who hasn't known anything other than being a lead dog in a running back room. Now, this is his fault. He signed up for it. He thought he was chasing a chip. Now, that shit went off the rails quick. And there's nothing worse than making a sacrifice for a losing football team. And I could tell very quickly he was getting frustrated. Right around like week 8, I thought they were going to trade him at the trade deadline. And we had this conversation on the podcast where I said, see, Dalvin, you did this to yourself. It didn't have to be this way. But you can still get out right now. And I thought they were going to trade him. And they didn't. I will give the Jets credit. They know they're not going anywhere but home. After week 18, they cut this man loose. They gave him an opportunity to find a home. He's going to latch on with a playoff team more likely than not. My guess is it'll be Dallas. I know the Ravens are probably interested as well. But my guess, and if the trend continues of chasing a chip, he'll go to Baltimore. If he really wants the football, he'll go to Dallas. The Ravens don't need him. They want him. They don't need him. They got stuff. That injury, though, to Keaton Mitchell opens up an opportunity for a guy like Dalvin Cook in Baltimore, right? Because it's just Justice Hill and Gus Edwards right now at the running back position. Like, you really don't have a ton of depth at running back. So a guy like Dalvin Cook would make a ton of sense. He'd jump right in front of Justice Hill and take all of the non-Gus Edwards carries, which would be a ton. Plenty. More than he's seen all season long, right? He'd have to learn the offense. He'd have to get acclimated. He'll have time to do that. The faster he signs, the more active he can be in that offense. But if he really wants the ball, he'll go to Dallas. They're struggling in the run game. They're dying for a shot in the arm. But you're also going home very early if you go to Dallas. So it'll be interesting to see what he decides to do. My guess is if Baltimore wants him, that's where he'll go. But let that be a lesson to all of you chip chasers out there. Be careful where you decide to sign, because it's the hot thing to do, because it's the cool place to be. If you really want to play and try to win a championship, there are alternatives. He could have gone to Miami. The Dolphins were interested. The money that he wanted was going to be a little bit, I don't know if they would have been able to work out the money aspect of it. But guess what? He could have been a big piece on that. And now, look, the Dolphins got running backs out of the wazoo now. They don't need him. They didn't know that before the season started. They didn't know what Devin Achane was going to be. They didn't know Raheem Mostert was going to stay healthy and do what he did this season. They don't need him now, but they didn't know that before the season started. Anyway, I said all of that to say this. Be careful when you're chasing a chip. Just because a team is loading up on some Eagles dream team shit doesn't mean you need to add your name to the list of players that they're loading up with. Look at your situation, look at their situation, and understand that that might not be the best situation for you. Don't be like Karl Malone and Gary Payton at the end of their careers trying to chase a chip. Shout out to Gary Payton for getting it done with the Heat, though. That was more respectable than that shit he did and tried to pull with the Lakers. Dalvin, you better than that, bro. Join the Ravens and give it a run. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me. Your man Louie T here on the 385th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to kicking it with y'all on Friday. We're going to be back. And I promise you're going to get a podcast out of me on Friday afternoon. I promise. Pinky swear. I'll have my picks, the final money picks of the week. That's been janky this season anyway. But hey, I started it in week 1. I think I gave you my picks. I think I'm going to end it with the picks in week 18. Now, what you got in between, your guess is as good as mine. But I'm going to finish the season strong. So I'll see you on Friday with those. Remember, there are no games, or there is no game on Thursday. So picks aren't due if you're in one of those leagues. Your picks aren't due until, let's just call it Friday night at 11:59. Saturday the games kick off at 4:30. I ain't got time for that shit. So the portal will be open until like 11:59 on Friday, and then I'm gonna cut it off and upload the sheets. But you'll get my picks on Friday. So I'll see you then. If you're a Washington fan, we'll be live tomorrow night for the Commanders Nightly News live for the final time this season. I got a couple of supers. Let me knock these out real quick. Vincent Cole, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Vincent Cole, writes, sleeper tight end suggested for your team, Colby Parkinson. I like Colby. I don't love Colby, and he's not a difference maker. We already got like a slightly less athletic version of Colby Parkinson on our squad already. So I'm not interested. I'm looking for an athletic dynamo. That's what I want. I want a mover. Vincent Cole, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, how shocked would you be if 1 in 10? Would you be 1 to 10 if Washington picks MHJ? You're assuming that we get the number 2 pick in the draft, right? Because I wouldn't be as shocked if we slip to the 3 hole, right? Don't make a move, and let's say that the Patriots are the 2, right? The Bears are 1, the Patriots are 2, we're 3, and Arizona's 4, and the Giants are 5, and the Giants trade up to 1, and they take a quarterback. The Patriots take a quarterback at 2. I wouldn't be as surprised if we took him at 3. I'd be surprised, but not as surprised. If we're at number 2, I'd say I'd be 1 being not surprised at all, 10 being absolutely floored. I'd say it's a 10. I'd be absolutely shocked. Like my socks knocked off, shocked. Like stick your finger wet in a socket, shocked. I can't see that happening. Now, if we're at 3, that number comes down considerably to like a 6 or a 7, because 2 quarterbacks are now gone, and you might not love the rest of those guys at 3. You just may think the better value pick here is the tackle or the wide receiver. Okay. I can get with that. But at 2, I find it hard to believe that there isn't another quarterback that you think is good enough to take at 2 after the first one's gone. So yeah, that'd be a shock to me. But in any event, you guys get out of here. I will catch up with you guys tomorrow. Be on the lookout for any uploads that may be coming your way. Those are going to be coming hot and heavy, as I told you. And so I look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Until then, y'all know what it is. God bless and good night.